It's like 5:30 right now, and I'm just procrastinating this long run. I have so little desire to go do this. So, going over some of the training results and race results from essentially the start of February until now. It's the middle of May. I'm about 1 month out from the Eugene Marathon, and I'm just going to go straight into it. For the past about 6 weeks now, I have just been overloaded with the amount of running I've had to do, the amount of sleeping I've had to do to recover from the running, and the amount I've had to eat just in order to stay up with that. I've been hitting essentially 70 miles per week consistently throughout all of February. I hit a monthly mileage PR in February at 273 miles, I believe. And it looks like March will absolutely crush that. I've been averaging about high 70s, low 80 miles per week in March. In addition to that, I'm not just doing high mileage, I'm doing high intensity as well. So we're talking an average of around 18 to 20 intense miles per week on top of those already existing base miles. This is essentially double the intensity I did leading up to CIM, and it's comprised of both VO2 max workouts and lactic threshold workouts, all getting combined at the end of the week in a long run tempo. So not only have I added in a significant amount of volume and intensity, I started exploring things like doing a double threshold workout. And double threshold is essentially where when you do a workout at your threshold paces, the next day, because of the exertion that you do in your muscles, you might be a little sore, you might have DOMS. So instead of waiting until the next day to be sore to then recover to the second or third day afterwards, you can do two workouts in the same day, one in the morning and one in the evening. And the idea is that the DOMS will probably be more intense the next day and you'll need to recover, but you can overall increase the intensity that you're able to do. So for me, that usually looks like 3 sets of 1.5 miles in the morning at around a 6:20 pace, which is the goal half marathon pace. And then in the evening, more of a VO2 max style workout of a 3x1 mile, 4x1K at around that 5K pace. In doing those, I think I've really personally felt the intensity. The RPE is around 8 to 9.5 for these workouts. And I've started to see a lot of good benefits from the races I've also done. So going into that, some key workouts I wanted to highlight were on the 17th of February, I did a 2x5 miles, which was really 10 miles straight at a 6:35 to start off with, and then going down to around a 6:40 at the end. 10 miles straight at 6:40, 2 months out from the marathon was great. The weather was good. And then after that, I did one burnout mile. That burnout mile was at a 6:40. I did it after cooling down for about a mile and a half. And my Garmin told me my heart rate hit 220 during that stretch. At the very end, I was essentially sprinting down a hill into a headwind, and it was the probably hardest I've ever pushed myself in training at all. The week afterwards, I went to Dallas, and the goal was to hit sub 18 in a 5K for the first time. And did I do it? Whew. That was tough. 18:50, about a minute slower than I ideally wanted to go, but it was just too hilly. And I just didn't have it in me to go under 18 that day. I think I could have pushed a little harder and gone 18:20 to 18:30, but just going up the hill at the last mile, I think I split like a 6:15 to a 6:20 third mile, and it just wasn't there. But I'm in a completely different spot where I'm actually really disappointed now with a high 18 5K, which is a great place to be in my opinion. The rest of that day was actually kind of wild too when I think about it, because I was done with the 5K. I then went into a cool down run where me and a former coworker did 3 miles at a 6:40 pace during the cool down just to get some extra marathon miles on sore legs. And then I ended up just walking around Lower Greenville playing pickleball. I was meeting up with one of my friends from college, and I ended up with around 40,000 steps that day for what should have been a light volume day. Okay, after that, I had the Woodlands Half Marathon, which was on Saturday, I believe March 2nd. And I learned it was on Saturday on Thursday. So I wasn't even, I thought it was going to be on Sunday. I personally wasn't 100% sure of why I thought it was on Sunday, aside from every race ever being on a Sunday. There's a full marathon on it too. But I went into that with the goal to first off beat my time in the Sugarland half, which was a 1:25:20, I believe. And because the Sugarland half was a little long, I thought I'd be able to do that. The next goal was to go sub 124, so a 1:23:59, something like that. And all past that, the A goal was to go sub 122, so a 1:21:59, things like that. Going into the race, I didn't have the highest hopes just because of how poorly that 5K went. The humidity was around 90%. It was 55 degrees, but it wasn't the perfect race day. And I set off at around a 6:15 to 6:20 pace. About 3 miles in, it just felt pretty difficult. But I told myself just hold on to the 4th mile, hold on to the 5th mile. And in the end, that was a 1:23:06. I hit a 1:23:04. I kind of take a bit of that blame, I guess you could say, for only going 1:23 and not a 1:22, because going into that 12.1th mile into 13.1, I looked at my watch, did the math. I just did not feel like I could do a 6-minute mile at that point. I'd just come off of like a 6:30 mile at the very end. I was getting tired, and I just kind of gave up on myself. I really think I should have just kicked it a little harder and locked in that 1:22:59. But all that said, a 1:23:04 and 8 or 9 out of 10 weather is an excellent result. I was really happy with it, and it scales to a 2:53 full marathon. So now the mantra is just don't get injured and keep training. Don't drop the intensity until around April 15th to 20th. After that, I went into the next Saturday on the 9th with a 3x3 in my long run, which was essentially supposed to be a 4x3, but I did the first 2 3-milers with a strong tailwind. I went out at 6:25 for the first one, 6:35 for the second one. Those 6:35s were some of the easiest miles I've ever ran, and then I turned back into the headwind, and I fought for my life to do a third set at 6:35. Because of that just aggressive effort, I ended at a 3x3 instead of a 4x3. And that kicked off what's been probably the most disappointing week of this build so far. Was that week of the 10th to the 17th that I'm just coming off of. It was just a hard week. I have a foot injury on the bottom of my left foot right now. I'm not exactly sure what it is. It's some kind of strain, I believe. But the main issue is essentially just anytime I'm planting it and walking, I can feel just a little stress on the bottom of it. It's not preventing me from running. I'm still doing intense miles. But it was enough that I didn't do a speed workout on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday of last week. I did a 4-mile tempo on Monday, and on Friday, I woke up with every intention of doing 10 to 13 miles at around a 6:45 pace. But basically 3.5 miles in, the dew point was probably 68 to 72. It was the first time it's been super humid here in Houston. I just didn't have it. So I ended up doing a chunked 6 miles of tempo on a relatively shorter 12-mile run, and I just called it there. That really does do a lot of damage on just the confidence, especially to watch a really good half marathon time like I did in the Sugarland half and the Woodlands half before, potentially turn into a more disappointing full marathon time. So in order to kind of overcome that, I basically just said, look, it's great to see that my down week is 75 miles with only 10 at speed. Now, I don't want to get excited and happy and say I can keep doing that for the rest of this build, but it wasn't the worst week to have so far. I ended up going to the rodeo afterwards, and for the first time, really, this entire build, I had an alcoholic drink, believe it or not. I had a beer at the rodeo. We were watching the Jonas Brothers. That was great. And I think the fact that I wasn't taking it as hard or as seriously helped me recover really well, because the next day I woke up and ran 10 miles. And that leads me to this current week, where on Sunday I did 2 workouts. The first one being a 6-mile tempo in the morning at 6:40. That one was really tough. Just holding on that long took a lot out of me, but I was happy to have done it at the end. And then I followed it up in the evening with a 2x2, which was meant to be at like a 6:35 pace. I ended up doing it at about a 6:30 pace because I was just feeling fresher, feeling rested. And today, this morning, I ended up doing a 2x2 at a 6:20. That was totally supposed to be a 3x2, but just coming off of 10 speed miles on Sunday and trying to push additional miles in, it didn't look like it was happening. So that's put me at about 710 miles so far on the year, which is an insane amount to be on in mid-March. We're looking at 1,000, 1,050 by the time the Eugene Marathon comes around. And speaking of the Eugene Marathon, I really only have about 41 days until the race, so really only about 30 days left of training. And these will probably be the hardest days of training I have left. Even this morning before the run, I was thinking, wow, I don't want to do this run. I don't really have a lot of excitement about it. And that's just where it's coming down to at the very end of a marathon build, where you do the work that's required to be done. You're happy when the workout's over. You feel good that you were able to motivate yourself, but it's not the same level of joy as those days where you just wake up, run 10 miles and feel great about it, and you're excited about the next day. It's getting really tough right now. So for the next 30 days, I only have a few more goals that I really need to hit. There's no more races coming up, at least planned. So it's really just going to consist of workouts. Obviously, I want to stay at around that 65 miles per week minimum, which I've been able to crush every single week so far. And I want to be staying at 15 or more miles of speed work per week. So I've been able to hit that basically every single week. But in addition to that, I want to see long tempos now. I mentioned 6 miles at a 6:40, and I talked earlier how I did essentially 10 miles straight in mid-February at a 6:40 pace. I want to keep doing those. I'd like to see a 13 to 16 mile tempo at about a 6:45 pace, and then a 10 or longer mile tempo at a 6:35 pace. Those 2 long run workouts on top of tired legs, no vapor flies, and essentially, well, those are the 2 main things, no taper as well. I think doing them on tired legs, no super shoes, and no taper, to be able to put that many miles together at sub-marathon pace is going to put me in a really good position to go sub-3, which is around a 6:50. All that to be said, this has been a great training block so far. I feel like nutritionally I still have some areas I can improve, but as far as training, I'm leaving it all out there. I'm feeling like I'm going essentially at 7,000 RPM, and honestly, I'm just excited to be done, and I'm excited to be running in Eugene here and to get back and say no speed work for 2 weeks straight. But that all said, that's all for me for now.